Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Plant Based with Nicole podcast. I'm your host, Nicolershaeholiday, also known as Plant Based Nicolershaeholiday on Instagram. Make sure you follow me. It will be in the description below. Today, I'll be interviewing my boy, Remson, aka TribeByNoire. You guys might recognize him because we did a session called Bowling for Fruit Q&A, and we did that bi-weekly. Check out the playlist under Bowling for Fruit to see all the Q&As we did. I really enjoyed doing that with him. I miss doing it with him, actually. We need to get that started again. But anyway, I also interviewed him on season 3 of my podcast. So I covered his story, how he got into the plant-based lifestyle and everything in those episodes, part 1 and 2. So go check those out under my plant-based with Nicole playlist, season 3, part 1 and 2. So go check that out. Today I have questions. I asked some of my followers and subscribers if they had questions for him. So I'll be covering their questions along with a few questions I have based around diabetes, menopause, fat loss, belly fat, and some other stuff. So let me just read a little bit about him. TribeByNoire, aka Remson, is a high raw vegan nutritionist and a fitness coach dedicated to helping as many people as possible lose weight and reverse and heal from chronic health conditions. He has helped countless people lose weight and heal their bodies. So he is very knowledgeable, and we're going to get that information from him today. Okay. We need to learn what's up. But anyway, without further ado, let's bring on Remson, aka TribeByNoire. Well, thank you so much, Remson. I'm so glad to have you back on my platform. It's always lovely, and I miss our Q&As. You just diss me, but that's okay. Thank you for coming here.
Wow. Good to be
you just
back.
you ghosted me. No, I'm just playing. No, really though, I'm happy to have you back because I always love talking to you because you got that knowledge, bruh.
Yes, ma'am. It's good. I don't have my fruit bowl with me, but
I know. Yeah, you guys, we had the I don't know what you want to call it. What's in the podcast? We had a session, I'll call it bowling for fruit, as I mentioned. So we would eat our fruit as they asked us, as the viewers asked questions. And some people would get irritated by it. Somebody had the nerve to say on my YouTube, why y'all smacking? I said, it's called bowling for fruit. We eat fruit while we talk. If you don't like it, don't watch it.
well, look at it. We go. Big shout out to the haters in the chat.
Shout out to the haters. No, I'm just playing. So I'm trying to say, okay, so I have questions from some of my followers on Instagram as well as my subscribers, a few questions from YouTube, and then I have a few questions of my own. But first, can you just, I'm not going to go into your story, but just tell everybody how long you've been eating plant-based.
So I officially got started. It was either sometime in 2012 or 2013. I round up, so I'll say 2013.
Wow.
Yeah.
You're
So
up
it's been a
there.
while.
Yeah,
Hmm.
that's really good. Um, are you a full-time coach, Remson?
Yes. Full time. I
Wow,
don't do anything else.
that's dope. That's nice to do what you love, helping others and getting paid for it and making your living off of it. That's wonderful. Okay.
Yep.
I just wanted to ask those questions real quick. I'm going to start off with Instagram.
Let's do it.
Kate, Kate3 said, I know fruit does not make you fat, but ask him, how do we navigate a high raw fruit diet at this stage of life, meaning menopause, and still lose weight? I know calories is a factor, but fruit is also low in calories. Do you need me to repeat the question?
No, I got it. I understand the spirit of the question. Yeah.
Okay.
So the biggest mistakes that women make, um, specifically past the age of like 40, right? So if you're over 40 or in your 50s or something like that, one of the biggest mistakes you make is not eating enough, right? And then when you're actively trying to lose weight, you actually make the situation worse. And the reason why is because typically when people are trying to lose weight, they eat less. Now, it works when you eat less, it works in the short term, but it doesn't work perpetually, meaning the longer you do it, the less effective it becomes. So you get diminishing returns, right? So let's say you've been under eating. Maybe you eat like once or twice a day, which a lot of women are guilty of that. Typically, you eat like once or twice a day. Maybe you'll have like breakfast, or you'll start eating at 12 and then have like a dinner or something like that, right? So it comes out to be like two meals a day, sometimes one, if you're busy with work and have kids, right? So you're under eating by default, and as you do that over a prolonged period of time, you get less nutrition. And with less nutrition comes more oxidative stress because you're not really putting the nutrients back into your body that you need in order to maintain an optimal metabolism, right? So there has to be some type of pattern change. So typically, ideally, you want to work in seasons. So you have your season of lack where things are tight, and you have a season of abundance. Your whole year can't just be a season of lack where you're just working hard in the gym, exercising, you're doing group exercise classes, you're doing an hour of cardio a day, you're running all kind of miles, stairmaster, doing all kind of cardio. Because essentially what happens is that all of that is a cumulative stress and fatigue, which has hormonal implications, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so basically with women, women are very good at handling stress, but you pay a price for it. We men handle stress much more poorly, so we don't live as long as women typically do, right? Women have estrogen and progesterone primarily. Estrogen maintains muscle mass and bone density, as well as maintains cardiovascular health and things like that. But uh, you drive down your progesterone the more stress you're under. So the more harder you work out, the longer you work out, that progesterone really declines to the point where you can even miss your menstrual cycle and drive yourself into early menopause, right? So you have a lot of women who actually go into menopause earlier than they should. I've had women
Yeah.
regain their cycle and they're like, oh, shoot, it came back,
Uh,
right?
wait, what?
I've had women regain where their cycle came back. Yeah.
Is it because their bodies weren't technically ready to go in the menopause?
Yeah, they weren't. Yeah, it's just because they were under so much stress. They were so nutrient deprived that their cycle just went away. They weren't necessarily going through menopause. It's just that, they
Uh,
just tanked they had such a lapse in their hormonal balance.
yeah.
And so basically, when you're well fed, you're eating early morning, you're finishing eating closer to bed, you're staying hydrated, you're eating in abundance, you're reducing your stress. Typically, what happens is your progesterone levels can increase and become more in line with your estrogen level. And your estrogen can actually be too high in order to compensate for the lack of progesterone. And so if your estrogen increases too much, that estrogen is then used to create hormone binding globulin, right? And that's particularly made in your liver. So when you have an abundance of protein in your diet and you have an abundance of estrogen, those two things can be used together to create something called thyroxine binding globulin, which actually binds up a large portion of your thyroid hormone. So you can actually have high T4 and low T3. And so people think, oh, I have hypothyroidism. When it's
Hmm.
really, it's a combination of things like insulin resistance, fatty liver, excessive estrogen, cortisol, low progesterone, right? So it's a variety of different factors all related to chronic stress, sleep deprivation, etc. So that's the background behind it. So the way you fix this problem generally is you have more of a lifestyle where your primary goal is to reduce stress as much as possible,
And this is
right?
you're referring to the question being that she's in menopause, right? All
Right,
this
right.
is pertaining to her. Okay, go ahead.
It's
Reducing
pertaining
stress.
to everything I just said. Yeah. So
Yeah.
basically, whether you're in menopause or before it or whatever the case is, it comes down to the same thing. So eating more will actually give you better results, especially when you do it with fruit, because the more fruit you eat, the more body fat you drop, right? So since nutrition is a zero sum game, you can actually be eating 300 or 400 grams of carbs a day and lose weight as a result, right?
And
And the
this
reason,
that pertains to, are you sure that that pertains to menopausal women as well?
yes, yes. And the reason why is because you increase insulin sensitivity. So insulin sensitivity basically is how effective your body is able to leverage insulin to shuttle that glucose into your cells, right? as that insulin sensitivity increases, your blood sugar levels will be lower on average, which means that your blood sugar levels will be closer to your fasted blood sugar levels more often in the day, which means that you'll be in the fat burning zone more often than not, right? So if your blood sugar comes down in between that 80 and 110, that's that fat burning zone where your body's metabolizing fat, using that for energy until your next meal. So basically, let's say if you eat and 45 minutes to an hour after eating, your blood sugar drops back down to 100 or 95 or 90 or something like that, you're in that fat burn zone, right? So then if you eat like 2 or 3 hours later, your blood sugar spikes back up again, takes you out of the fat burning zone, but then your blood sugar comes back down again, and then you get back down into that fat burning zone. So what happens is if you're not doing all this exercise and whatnot, all of the glucose and whatnot that you consume, instead of it being stored inside fat cells, is being stored inside your muscle tissue and vital organs, right? And it's being used for energy to maintain optimal blood chemistry, brain chemistry, hormonal balance, skeletal muscle, that type of thing. When you're insulin resistant, the opposite happens. That's when your blood sugar is perpetually high, which means you're never really in the fat burn zone, which makes it impossible to lose weight, right? And then that glucose is not effectively going to your vital organs and skeletal muscle and being used by your brain. So you feel lethargic, you feel bloated, you gain body fat, easily, and it's difficult to lose the weight. And when you exercise, it actually makes it worse because that improves the insulin sensitivity in the short term, but the stress, if you're doing a long workout, it overrides those benefits. And so then it actually makes the insulin resistance worse because your cortisol levels become really elevated.
But that doesn't apply to weightlifting, right? Because I'm hearing and reading that like weightlifting is better for people going through the
Weightlifting is
change
better.
in low
It is.
impact cardio. That's okay,
It
right?
is. It is, right? So if you're going to engage in intense exercise, it should be resistance training, but the workouts typically should be anywhere from 20 to 30 minutes,
For
right?
weightlifting?
Yes. So your weightlifting, it shouldn't really be like, long durations of weightlifting because you accumulate a lot of systemic fatigue, right? And then you run into that cortisol issue again.
Oh Lord.
If you do cardio, it could be things like walking, hiking, things like that. But when you're running 10 miles a day or something like that, and then you're doing the resistance training on top of that, and then you have kids and whatever, your work, all of this stress accumulates and it starts to interfere negatively with your sleep quality. And this is where the whole insulin resistance thing really starts to set in,
I'm not
right?
gonna lie, like this is so discouraging. Like that, once the women as we are going through the change, like all these things we have to consider now, and all these, I got to make sure my cortisol doesn't increase. I got to make sure my insulin doesn't increase because I'm going to, it's just too much. And it's just like,
Well,
I
it's
can't
not a
take
thing that you have to make it's not a thing that you have to make sure happens, right? A lot of the times because you're doing too much, right? And so really it's just like, you got to chill out a little bit,
it.
right? You don't need to put so much effort into the weight loss. This is the problem. When people try to force it to happen, you can't work the weight off. That's not how it works, right? Because because the stress management. So work starts to increase stress. So more work means more stress, which works against you, what you're trying to achieve. Doing
Mm.
the work is fine. So, like, for example, walking 5 or 6 miles a day, that's enough. Doing the resistance training, let's say every other day for 20 to 30 minutes, or even training every day for 15 to 20 minutes. That's enough, right? And then having a decent bedtime and staying hydrated, that's enough. It's not really that complicated. It's just that we're putting a lot of things in. We're trying to do all this work to get the weight off. And the thing is that you run into time constraints. You can only burn but so much body fat at a time. So just to give you a perspective, 1 pound of fat is 3,500 calories. So which means you have to burn 3,500 calories of fat in order to drop 1 pound of body fat,
Yeah,
right?
which means that you have to be in a deficit and burn more than you eat, right?
No, 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 no. And the reason why is because not all the calories you burn is from your food. So for example, if I eat 100 grams of carbs now, that's going to be 400 calories. But the next 400 calories that I burn is not coming from what I just ate. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
It's a hormonal thing. It's not a calorie thing. It's a hormonal thing. So if I eat 100 grams of carbs and that gets stored inside my skeletal muscle, well, if I'm not working out or really working my skeletal muscle, then I'm not going to be burning much of the glucose that's stored inside that skeletal muscle. I mean, my body's going to be burning something else, right? It's going to be burning a fuel that is more so, geared for like an auxiliary form of energy, which is going to be fat. Now, if I elevate my heart rate and my heart rate gets into like the 120s, 130s, 140s, things like that, now my body's going to be burning more glucose, right, from the carbohydrates I ate,
So
right?
Remson, how do we burn 3,500 calories a week to lose the 1 pound of fat?
The best way to do it is to improve sleep quality and blood oxygenation. So, so for example, so basically, deep breathing is one of the best ways to actually drop body fat. As a matter of fact, when you burn body fat, it's primarily, fat is primarily leaves your body when you exhale, right? So it comes out in the gas. So when you exhale out carbon dioxide, that's the waste or the byproduct as a result of that fat burn, right? So when
Mhm.
I'm sleeping, my body is fully relaxed, my heart rate is low, which means I'm going to be more in a fat burning zone while I'm sleeping, right? Now, if I'm stressed out, I'm going through heart palpitations, my heart rate's all high, I'm going to be stressed out. That raises my blood sugar level and all that. Now I'm not in the fat burn zone anymore. I'm more likely going to be in the fat burn zone at rest. You primarily drop body fat or burn body fat at rest. It's not really the
Really?
exercise that burns the body fat, it's at rest,
Oh.
right? The reason why the low intensity cardio works so effectively is because it doesn't raise your heart rate too high.
Mhm.
The higher your heart rate gets, the less fat you burn,
Hmm.
right? It doesn't matter how many calories you burn, right? It's not a calories thing, right? So you can burn fuel that's stored in your liver, you can burn fuel that's stored inside your fat cells and your subcutaneous fat and visceral fat, or you can burn energy that's stored inside your skeletal muscle tissue, right? It's not all just this collective caloric burn. That's not how it works. Your body picks and chooses where the energy is coming from. And what your body chooses depends on what you're doing. So if you sleep more and you have better quality sleep, you drop the body fat much quicker. And then your
Wow.
insulin sensitivity improves much quicker,
Let me go take me a
right?
nap.
Yeah. So I mean, the thing is that, when I talk to women, I can pretty much tell, like, if you're struggling to drop body fat and you're struggling to drop belly fat, I'm pretty sure that on a scale of 1 to 5, your sleep quality is probably somewhere in between a 2 and a 3. You
Mm.
don't sleep very well, you don't sleep very long, right?
Yeah.
And I can also reasonably assume that your blood sugar normally is over 110 for most of the day,
What's a normal blood sugar?
in between 90 and 110, 90 and 105, somewhere around there, 90 and
Speaking
100.
speaking of belly fat, um, Mod Mod E Cuisine asks, "How do you lose menopause belly?"
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. It's the blood sugar thing. The best thing you can do is improve your insulin. The reason why I'm a big advocate of fruit consumption and most of your caloric intake coming from fruits. And the thing is that with a lot of the women that I work with, the most noticeable change that they make and the quickest change is the shrinking of the waist. I've had women who are postmenopausal within 12 weeks drop like 4 to 6 inches off their waist.
From eating a high fruit diet?
Yes, yes,
See, now I'm really
yes.
confused because I've been reading up on like the fruit. because it's natural sugar, but it's still sugar and it can raise the cortisol, therefore making it hard to lose the fat around the waist
Sugar
and
does
stuff.
not raise cortisol. Sugar drops cortisol. So the primary things that'll immediately drop cortisol are sugar and salt.
Are you serious right now?
I'll send you studies. I'll send you
Oh my.
studies that show this. Yeah. The reason, as a matter of fact, the reason why you get sugar cravings is because your cortisol is high. So there's three primary food cravings: sugar, salt, and crunchy, right? So basically, if you're having food cravings, the foods that you're craving, they're either going to be sweet or salty. It's because your stress is high. Now, if you're more in a burnt out, depressed state, you get more sugar cravings. If you're craving salt, that's more you're more high strung and dealing with anxiety, right? But those are cortisol responses. And so glucose is actually a therapy. I guarantee you, if you take a blood test, you see your cortisol numbers, and you go on like a mostly fruit diet and you eat in abundance, and then in 12 weeks you go and check your numbers again, your cortisol levels will be lower. And I know because I work with people and we actually follow their blood test results
I,
to
I
gauge our improvements.
I have a question. So you said you had some clients that their waist shrunk from eating a high fruit. Have you, but those are people who coming from like an animal diet or maybe even a
No,
junk. They were already
no.
eating plant-based?
Most of the people, yeah, most of the people that I work with, they've either been plant-based for years or they just recently started in plant-based in some way, shape, or form.
Okay, but what if they're eating high fruit already and they still have gained weight?
Yeah, but if you're eating high fruit already, chances are it's an issue with your strategy where you're not eating enough. Actually, in actuality, the biggest problem that people have when going on like a fruit dominant diet is they actually don't eat enough, right? So for example, you can say, hey, I eat like 300 grams of carbs a day. Okay. And how many grams of protein and fat are you eating? Because if it's just 300 grams of carbs a day and then your fats and proteins are like really low, then guess what? You're only really eating like 12, maybe 1,300 calories a day. So it's not as much, it's not that much as you think. You should be closer to 2,000 calories a day, a minimum of 1,600. And 1,600 is cutting it pretty tight.
If you're okay, so what's a good amount for someone that's in menopause to be eating if they're trying to lose fat around the midsection and back?
Yeah, so generally speaking, like I think in between like roughly 250 to 300 grams of carbs a day.
No calories.
In
Calories.
between four, I'm talking about the grams because the
Oh,
calories, I already said it's in between 16 and 2,000 calories.
oh, okay.
But when we break down the macros of your carbs, fats, and proteins, that's going to be like around 250 grams of carbs, somewhere around there. Fat intake is going to be somewhere in between 45 and 60 grams of fat per day. And then protein would be in between, I want to say 40 or 60, something like that.
Okay.
Right. So
Yeah.
that's pretty much the breakdown. The split would come with that. Right.
Sounds good. I'm gonna
And then
go.
also building muscle mass is going to be the thing that really causes the body transformation. So
Mm-hmm.
body composition is the name of the game, right? So body composition is a zero-sum game, which means more of one thing is necessarily less of another. So if you increase muscle mass, by proxy, you're also decreasing fat mass, right? You can't really raise one without decreasing the other. It doesn't really work like that unless your diet is really pathological, right?
Okay. Yeah.
So this is
I
where
want
your training strategy comes into play.
I'm gonna get back to that because I do that is one of my questions about fat loss and building muscle and stuff. But
Mm.
so I'm gonna go back over to Instagram and finish these questions, and I'm gonna go back and then revert back to the fat loss, muscle
Mhm.
building. Naturally.me.t says, I would love to know what he eats on the average day.
Yeah, so what do I eat on the average day? So Some of my favorite foods probably that I eat the most is cantaloupe, watermelon, pineapple, kiwis, apples, grapes, to name a few. So like a meal could be um 3 to 4 pounds of cantaloupe or watermelon. Another meal could be like 2 to 3 pounds of bananas. Another meal could be 2 pounds of grapes. Another meal could be um 4 to 6 apples. Right. So I mean it's pretty high volume, right? As far as foods that are not fruits, I'll do like overnight oats with like hemp seeds in like plant-based milk, what else do I put in there? Cinnamon, sea salt, sugar, PB Fit, which is powdered peanuts,
Hmm.
pea protein, that kind of thing. I make a smoothie bowl, right? And then as far as like one of the only cooked foods that I eat, I don't really eat many cooked foods much lately, but the one cooked food I do eat is red lentils,
Mm.
right? So I'll do like this red lentil veggie bouillon. That's my jam right there. Um, and I'll season it with thyme, parsley, cilantro, garlic, cumin, sea salt, onion powder. I'll put a little bit of brown sugar in it, and like a quarter cup of nutritional yeast, right? For like a whole cup of like red lentils. So that right there is like 110 grams of carbs and like 45 grams of protein, very low in
Mm.
fat, that kind of thing, right? And
Wow.
that'll be like an evening meal that I'll have like to cap off the day. And then I'll have basil tea or something like that, either before or after it or during it, something like that.
Hmm. So, what was the thing you said you eat for breakfast sometimes aside from the fruit? What was it called again? Did you
What do
say
you mean aside
oats
from the
or
food? Oh yeah,
you?
overnight oats, yeah.
Oh, overnight oats. Okay, so you eat like
Yeah.
oatmeal for breakfast, maybe a fruit meal
Not
for
really.
lunch.
That's not usually my first meal. My first meal is normally like the fruits. I'll eat like a large portion of fruits.
Oh, okay, okay.
All right, so I'll give myself a nice little food belly with some
Oh yeah,
with some watermelon and whatnot. Yeah.
man. When I eat watermelon, man, my stomach be looking like I'm 6 months pregnant.
Uh-huh.
I'm
Yeah.
like, what in the
Uh-huh.
world? A food baby. Enjoy running. This is a little long. Okay. Enjoy running on Instagram said, I would like to know if lack of protein can affect the transportation of oxygen in the blood during high intense running. If not, what could be the reason? I'm an experienced runner and I have been doing high intense training twice every week for the past 4 years. I have not changed anything in my training. I have changed my diet to eating raw foods during the day, regular vegan dinners with very little processed foods. Hope you have some answers. Do you need me to read that again? Because I know that was
No,
kind of long.
I understand the spirit of the question.
Okay.
In order to have a lack of protein, you're under eating, right? But as far as blood oxygenation is going to be more of a hydration and carbohydrate intake issue, right? So I mean, if you're a long distance runner, your caloric burn is going to be way higher than your average person, right? So that's like a lot of sustained aerobic activity. And the primary driver of oxygen absorption and utilization is going to be glucose or stored glycogen inside your skeletal muscle tissue, as well as electrolyte and hydration levels. Right. So you gotta make sure that you're getting enough electrolytes, you're staying hydrated enough and getting enough carbs. So you may want to have something where it's like you're consuming anywhere from 400 to 600 grams of carbs a day, right? If you're going to be doing the long distance running kind of thing,
Mhm.
right? But it's not really a protein issue.
Okay. Thank you for answering that. Now I'm going to go over to YouTube. I have a few questions on here from some of the subscribers. La Estudiante says, can you ask him what are his thoughts on stuff like protein powders and other foods slash supplements that have been processed?
Yeah, so basically, I am not against protein powders. I think protein powders are very beneficial and useful, especially for people who are raw vegans or high raw vegans. Are they necessary? No. Are they beneficial? Yes. So I'm not dogmatic. I'm not like dogmatically against anything that's processed. I'm not dogmatically against any kind of supplementation or anything like that. I'm not. I have a very pragmatic approach to nutrition and pursuing goals, right? So me personally, I use unflavored pea protein isolate, right? And I'll put that in like foods and things like that. Another big,
That's a protein powder.
yes.
Okay.
Another thing I'm a big fan of is creatine monohydrate. Creatine monohydrate, basically creatine is a molecule or a non-essential amino acid that is made inside our bodies already, right? Um, oh,
What happened?
no, I got you. Yeah, so basically our bodies naturally make like 1 gram of creatine per day, right? Um, if you supplement with it, you can be a hyper responder if you've been raw vegan or high raw vegan for a prolonged period of time because your diet is typically going to be lower in protein and you're not eating any meat, which means you're not consuming preformed creatine. So you're going to be lower in creatine as a raw vegan or high raw vegan more so than anybody with a conventional way of eating. So supplementing with it actually is very beneficial to do, right? And when I say hyper responder, meaning you notice greater improvements from supplementing with it than a person normally would. So I'm a big fan of supplementing with that.
Mm-hmm.
Do you need to? No. Is it beneficial? Yes. Right. I am a big fan of supplementing with magnesium, right? My top two are magnesium glycinate and magnesium malate. People typically are deficient in magnesium. Magnesium is actually supposed to be abundant in our diet, in our food, and in our water. But being that our water is desalinated, it's stripped of all of its minerals. So basically, we're not getting as much magnesium as we probably should, right?
Mm.
Also, if you've been under eating and trying to lose weight, you're going to be consuming less magnesium by default because you're eating less, right? So keeping those magnesium levels up, it's a good idea to supplement with magnesium, right? So magnesium malate is really good for people with gut health issues because that malic acid, which the magnesium is chelated to or bound to, then improves and helps to heal your intestines and digestive function. Malic acid also is good for, and I just did a video on this too, but malic acid is good for neutralizing acid, in particular uric acid, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now you get malic acid pretty much from all of the fruits that you eat in pretty significant quantities, right? So when you're eating things like apples, grapes, cherries, berries, kiwis, citrus fruits, things like that, you're getting a lot of that malic acid. And that malic acid neutralizes the uric acid, which is a substrate for things like gallstones and kidney stones. So the more malic acid you get in your diet, the more magnesium you get in your diet, you significantly reduce the chances of you developing things like GERD, gout, stones, as well as a variety of other issues like fatty liver disease, hypothyroidism, and various other issues.
Okay. Nice. Thank you.
So
I hope everybody's taking notes.
yeah, because you know how I do. Um, as far as other supplements, I'm trying to think what other supplements. There's not many. Probably like a probiotic and like vitamin D3.
Okay. Yeah.
Right, I'm big fans of those.
Yeah. Because we don't really get
Think.
vitamin D. We don't really
Mm,
get vitamin D in our food, the plant-based
right, right.
people.
Right.
Um, the last question from a subscriber is when is it recommended to have, say, like 100 grams of protein? And is plant protein the same as animal protein, or do vegans need to eat more protein to get the same benefit of, say, 100 grams of the animal protein?
Yeah, so basically, I mean, you can because it could be beneficial to consume 100 grams of protein. You mean in one shot or throughout the day? I don't know, but uh, no matter how much protein you consume, your body only uses a certain amount at one time. It doesn't really particularly matter how much you consume. The only thing that really matters is how much you use.
Mhm.
So the general recommendation is 1 gram of protein per kilogram of lean mass for most people. Now, if you're going to increase your protein intake, you would necessarily be decreasing your carbohydrate intake, right? Uh, High amounts of carbohydrates and high amounts of protein together can make insulin resistance worse. So a lot of times what people do is when they're trying to lose weight, they increase their protein intake. And what happens is that causes them to have higher blood sugar levels as a result. Protein is insulinogenic, similar to how fat is, right? So
Mhm.
the way that your body metabolizes energy from carbohydrates versus fats and proteins is fundamentally different. Carbohydrates increase and spike your blood sugar in the immediate term. Fats and proteins spike your blood sugar 3 to 4 or even 5 hours later. So if you eat an abundance of fat and protein and then check your blood sugar immediately after, you won't really see much of an increase. But 4 or 5 hours later, then you'll notice it being a lot more elevated. And so then if you eat carbohydrates after consuming a lot of fat and protein, the carbohydrates will further spike your blood sugar a lot higher than it would have normally if you didn't have all the protein in the fat, right? So if your goal is to lose weight and maximize insulin sensitivity, then increasing protein intake while maintaining high levels of carbohydrate intake probably is not really a good idea.
So, what's a good balance again?
What's a good balance in what? You mean as far as how
Like
many grams
you
or?
said, like increasing the protein and increasing the carbohydrates could actually, cause
Yeah. And
something
what
to
I'm saying
increase.
is
So,
it if you're going to increase your protein intake, then it would be a good idea to decrease carbohydrate intake,
oh,
right? So having high carb and protein intake together while trying to lose weight, those things are not compatible. It makes it harder to lose weight because it keeps your blood sugar more elevated.
oh Lord Jesus, I don't know what to eat. I
I
don't
already
know what to
said.
do. I know. I got to go back and listen to this again. I'm gonna take some intense notes.
This is also why I just make diet plan. People are like, hey, can you just make me a plan? Right?
Yeah, just make me a plan, Remson. No, I'm just playing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
have to book a call first, right? All right, that's all those questions. Now, I watched one of your videos, one of your shorts, and you touched on some of this already in earlier, but you said like menopause when menopausal women gain so easily, and it's a struggle for us to lose weight. It's because of the insulin resistance. Ugh, I hate
Mhm.
this whole thing. Insulin resistance causes your blood sugars to stay elevated, preventing you from burning fat or burning muscle to any meaningful degree. And a key to fixing some of this is stress management, no skipping meals, no intense fasting, and no carb cutting. You also said eat more often, with 80% being fruit, also incorporating herbal teas, which leads to a reversal of insulin resistance and then allows you to
Mhm.
reshape your body. So that's all we have to do to lose weight is the stress management, no skipping meals, no intense fasting, no carb cutting, and eating more fruit.
Basically. Basically, I made it real simple. Don't overthink it.
Okay. What was I gonna say? You said eating more often. So what does that look like? Like, okay, a friend of mine last week was telling me she doesn't eat fully plant-based, but she was saying not to be eating in between meals because it can increase your insulin, which is gonna make you, have difficulty losing fat. I was like, I can't go from I eat lunch around 12-ish because that's when I get hungry. And then I eat dinner around 5 something. I can't go that long. I got to eat a snack in between because around 2-ish, I get hungry. So is that true? Because you said eat more often. So is
Yeah.
3 meals and a snack okay? Like if I eat breakfast in the morning and then
You
I
can
have
eat like 5 or 6 times a day. So, okay. So basically,
and I'm talking about during menopause, like women, because where estrogen is
yes.
okay.
Yeah, snacking is like your best friend. Snacking is amazing. You know what I mean? So like you can just like imagine you have like your little containers, even just like say if you have like a mason jars or like containers, right? And so you have like 12, 16 ounces of pineapple, then another meal you have a few kiwis with some leafy greens. Another one, you have like some blueberries and strawberries with some leafy greens, maybe like like a little bit of sunflower seed kernels, sprinkle a little salt on it for the extra sodium. And so you can have like these small meals periodically throughout the day and they accumulate. And so basically what happens is these little meals are like stress management breaks, right? So basically you get more water, you get more electrolytes, you get more micronutrients, more antioxidants, and you get more glucose, right? And that's a nice little hit for your brain. And when you eat that fruit, it significantly improves your brain chemistry, right? Sprinkling salt on food is actually a pretty clever idea. So basically, in salt actually arguably could actually be like a muscle building supplement, right? Because sodium is needed in order to grow muscle, increase training performance, and et cetera, right? It's an electrolyte. So your body actually requires sodium in order to be able to use energy and maintain adequate cellular respiration. But in any case, right? So if you have, your leafy greens, you sprinkle some lime juice or lemon juice over it with a variety of different berries and kiwis and things like that, that helps as well. Adding a little pinch of salt into like lime juice, water, or putting it in, or even putting it in tea, right? So things like that are very beneficial. But basically, if you snack throughout the day on these fruits and whatnot, you'd be able to you actually have lower insulin levels because you become more insulin sensitive, which means that your body requires less insulin to handle the blood sugar load. Right. So this idea that like eating fruit more frequently increases insulin, that's not true. There's no scientific data to support that.
Hmm.
Insulin sensitivity reduces the level of insulin in your bloodstream at any given time. So it helps to lower your insulin, and therefore you get lower insulin, you get more fat burn.
Hmm. It's amazing how everybody says different things about different ways of eating. And it's like, who's right? Yeah,
Well, no, the
I guess.
data says what it says, right?
Yeah.
So I work with a lot of diabetics.
Hmm.
So I had the privilege of seeing what works in real time because I had people who were diabetics with continuous glucose monitors. So we have been able to get real insights into what improves blood sugar levels and what doesn't, right? So I mean, it's not like a matter of opinion. It just works the way that it does, right? I've gone from the data, and we've also been able to experience it as well, where
Hmm.
periodically the blood sugar, and the thing that's interesting is a lot of people struggling to lose weight, typically their blood sugar, when they wake up first thing in the morning, their blood sugar is like 120, 130, sometimes it's 160, 180. So you already wake up with high blood sugar. And then if you skip breakfast, the blood sugar doesn't really come down. And then you have a meal, and then you have like carbs, fats, proteins mixed in that meal. And so your blood sugar just goes up and stays elevated. And so basically, people are just with elevated blood sugar the whole entire day from the moment they get up.
Hmm.
And the blood sugar never comes down, so they don't really lose the weight. That's the problem, right? So this is why a lot of it is about insulin sensitivity and stress management. Everything comes into play from there, right?
Okay. This is a lot to take in, Remson. There's
I'll
a
send you
lot
the
of
studies if you want to
information.
read up on it.
Yeah,
So
send
the
it to
data
me.
is what it is.
I'm down to read some studies. So I have a question about diabetes. You know, everyone in society is like, eating too much carbs and sugar is, what causes diabetes. And when they have diabetes, they can't eat a lot of carbs and sugar. But you've helped a lot of people heal their bodies with
Hmm.
diabetes, eating the fruit and stuff.
Hmm.
So how
Hmm.
is that when it's been told that what you're doing is the opposite
Hmm.
of what we've been hearing all these years?
Right. Now the thing is that and there is no data that demonstrates that sugar consumption causes diabetes. There's no scientific data to that whatsoever. So people say that they're just making it up or repeating something they heard. There is no scientific data that demonstrates that. None. Um, most, pretty much everyone with, I've never met a person with type 2 diabetes with a carbohydrate dominant diet, ever. Ever. Never in my life have I seen that. I've been doing this for years. Never seen it. And there's no data to support that. Insulin resistance or type 2 diabetes is a chronic, severe form of prevalent insulin resistance, persistent insulin resistance, right? Insulin resistance to the point where blood sugar levels or the A1C is, like over a 6.5, getting into the sevens and eights, et cetera, right? And your A1C is basically your average blood sugar over a period of like 12 weeks, right? It is lipotoxicity. So the more fat and protein you eat, the more insulin resistant you become, right? So scientific data shows, pretty much all the data shows that you can induce diabetes with saturated fat. That's the one thing you need, right? So you just increase saturated fat and you develop insulin resistance. And even population data shows that the places with the highest levels of type 2 diabetes eat the most amount of saturated fat and eat the most animal products. So in any population where you see this increase in dairy and meat consumption, you see this increase in diabetes. Now, the thing is that when you combine high levels of fat and protein and you add carbohydrates into it, especially processed carbohydrates, that makes it worse because that contributes to the chronically elevated blood sugar.
Wow. And that's like totally against everything that they've been saying all these years, right? But you have had proof in the pudding.
I mean, think about it. Even how does somebody's cat become diabetic? Because what is cat food made of? It's not carbohydrate dominant. So how do you get a diabetic cat?
Wow, that's true. And
They're not
dogs.
eating a bunch of sugar and carbs. They don't eat like that. They're carnivores. So how do you get a diabetic cat?
And dogs too.
Right. How do you get a diabetic dog? It's not like you're feeding them bread and fruit and all of that type of stuff. It's not what dog food is made out of.
Wow.
So
That's
there is no
interesting.
evidence. As a matter of fact, um, and if I was wrong, I wouldn't be able to, first of all, I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing now. I wouldn't be able to maintain my position as long as I have. I couldn't work with diabetics and put them on a fruit dominant diet and be putting them in the hospital with all of this fruit consumption. I'd get sued into oblivion. That's hardcore malpractice, right?
Right.
So and the thing is that you won't find, and there's a book that you can read on this called Mastering Diabetes, right? You can look up a guy, and it's two doctors actually. I forgot the name of the other one, but it's another doctor named Cyrus Kambata, and he's type 1 diabetic. And he eats like 700 grams of carbs and all of that, right?
Whoa.
He's like a high raw vegan, right? And they be eating all kind of mangoes and sweet potato and bananas and all types of stuff. They eat tons of fruit. He's like eating 600 to 700 grams of carbs and all of that a day,
Sheesh.
right? And so he's written a book on it. They've even published, studies on their approach to it, right? And this, the whole like high carb dominant, this is a thing I've been talking about for years. I've been saying this for years. Even if you go on my YouTube channel, you go back years, right? I've been saying 65% carbs, 12 to 15% fat, and the rest is protein. I've been saying that for years. I haven't moved off that position ever. I even have the before and after pictures. That high carb thing got me to 6% body fat.
Did you say 12 to 15% fat?
So in other words, of my total macros, only 12 to 15% of it would be dietary fat if I'm trying to drop body fat.
Oh, shoot. Mine's way higher than that.
Probably more than likely, yeah.
I'm hearing that for menopause you need to increase your fats a little.
Well, I mean, it's
Is that true?
relative. I'm talking about a percentage,
Okay.
right? So it's relative to the amount you eat overall. If I say 12 to 15%, now you can eat more fat, but you would just also increase the amount of carbohydrates you consume, right? So if you're eating carbs and fats to like a 4-to-1 ratio or a 5-to-1 ratio or something like that, yeah. So like let's say um you eat 6 times a day, but 3 of those meals you have around 20 grams of fat. That's 60 grams of fat a day. But if each one of those meals, along with the 20 grams of fat, you have like 100, 110, 120 grams of carbohydrates, well, and it's all relative. You see what I'm saying? But when you increase carbohydrate consumption, especially from fruit, that offsets the blood sugar numbers and improves insulin sensitivity, right?
Hmm. 12
But I
to
specify
15.
fruits because of the water content. Fruit is like the only food that ranges between 70 to 90% water. Only bananas are like 70% water. But typically
Mm-hmm.
all other fruits are between 80 to 90%.
Have to go rethink and transform my mind about everything again.
You're about to
This
be
is
cutting carbs and all of that.
not cutting carbs, but just increasing my protein and the fats because as of September 1st, I will be in full blown menopause. So I've been researching a lot and just learning all these different things, and so I'm just trying to figure it all out. But
You can increase your protein intake. Like the
yeah.
red lentils is a great way to do that as your last meal.
Hmm.
But a good habit to do would be to start eating earlier. So like whatever you do, don't skip breakfast.
Oh, don't worry. I can't. My body does not, my body needs to eat at all times. No. Yeah, I don't know how people could do that. That's not my gift. I can't. Uh, it's coming up on the hour on Zoom. So I wanted to just really quickly, if you can, the best way to build muscle eating vegan, because everybody always wants to know this question. And you kind of already talked about foods to eat. So what kind of exercises should people focus on, and how many days a week should one be lifting weights?
Yeah, so basically with the training strategy, and I touched on that earlier, generally speaking, training anywhere from 3 to 4 days, a week, high intensity training where you're training anywhere from, well, yeah, like an hour and a half to 2 hours a week, right? As far as resistance training is concerned.
Mm-hmm.
And then, walking 5 to 6 miles a day. Um, that's like the basic framework of your exercise routine, right?
Okay.
And then when it comes to your food consumption, um, having well, you could split your overall total protein intake in between like 2 meals. So like let's say you have a high protein, you have your first meal, which is a low protein meal, and you have that like around 6, 7, 8 o'clock in the morning. Let's say before you train, and then after you train, let's say you have that overnight oat pudding like I do, right? Or you have like 8 ounces of coconut yogurt with, your 8 ounces of blueberries and 8 ounces of strawberries. And, like let's say 3 tablespoons to a quarter cup of hemp seeds, and you have a meal like that for that second meal after your workout, right? And that meal could be, depending on what kind of coconut yogurt you use, you can add pea protein to it, and that could be like a 30 grams of protein right there. And then in your final meal of the day, you have like another 30 grams of protein or 40 grams of protein, right? And that would
Mm-hmm.
get you your protein for the day. You don't really need constant hits of protein per se. You can concentrate them into a much earlier portion of the day post workout and then the last meal of the day. That's like the best ways to partition your protein intake.
Okay. And I just like to point out that as you see, he's yoked and swole, and got muscles all over the place, and he eats a high fruit diet. Very
Yep.
interesting. Very interesting.
Yep.
Can we get a little flex real quick?
Can we get one of these a little bit? Just a
Dang!
little bit. I want to be
Dang!
humble. I don't.
Be humble. I heard
Oh,
that.
I got to introduce this flex. I got to intro the neck flex. That's the one I got to do. We got to.
What's that called?
It's the neck flex. That's the neck and toes flex. Can't see my toes, right? But we can get the the uh the make your neck great again.
That's dope. That's dope. Flex one more time. And this my Zoom is whoever's speaking is who shows up. So just in case it didn't catch you, because I was talking while you were flexing, say something while you flex, just so it makes sure it shows up.
Which flex? Which one? The neck
The
or the
bicep,
arm? Which
the
one?
bicep.
All right. So this is the arm flex, the top flex. I gotta
Yeah,
practice my posing a little bit, right? Yeah.
that's what's up. That's what's up. And
There
he
we
does
go.
this eating a plant-based diet, a high raw vegan plant-based diet, you guys. The proof is
That's
in the
right.
pudding. Well, thank you so much, Remson. I appreciate your knowledge and your words of wisdom as usual. You always have a lot of insight, and I'm going to go back and watch this and take notes this time. um,
Absolutely.
yeah, thank you so much for coming on my platform today. Everybody, next week I will not be having a podcast. It's my husband's birthday weekend. So I will resume on September 8th, and my next guest is Miles Strozer. He's a fitness coach as seen on TLC's show, MILF Manor. You guys go check it out. It's one of those binge watching shows. I want to get into the topic of the show, but go check it out. MILF, MILF. Y'all know what that stands for. Go check it out. But yeah, I'll be bringing him on. He's been eating a vegan diet for like 5 or 6 years now. And he's a fitness coach, so we got some things to talk about. But anyway, thank you guys for watching, and I hope you guys have a wonderful week. See you in the next episode. Bye.